One of the biggest misconceptions in white-collar cases is when federal agents or prosecutors want to talk with an individual, they often think, I did nothing wrong, so I don't need a lawyer. And then the next thing they know is that they're being named as a defendant in a criminal action. And so having a lawyer like myself to advise and guide you through the process is always the safest and the best option. Seizure of assets in a white-collar crime is very common, and sometimes it's usually the first indicator of an individual being subject to an investigation. You're going about your life, everything is normal as it seems, and then all of a sudden one day the FBI is there at a person's home seizing and collecting evidence from the home, but also seizing bank accounts, freezing them, collecting the assets, preventing them from being used. I've represented individuals in those contexts many, many times. There have been times when clients have come to me after all of that's taken place, and it's much harder to intercede and try to get funds released that are available to the client to pay for their expenses, to pay lawyer fees, to pay for whatever. By me getting involved and helping to keep them from building a case against a client is going to save them a tremendous amount of discomfort and stress and anxiety of actually having to be arrested, go before a judge, try to get bail. So being able to keep criminal charges filed against someone is absolutely one of the best things possible, because once the accusation is brought, even though you're presumed innocent, a lot of times that individual is having to work to prove their innocence, and when they're not, they have to go to trial. I have a team of forensic accountants that I have at my disposal to assist when it comes to reviewing document-heavy cases where there's a lot of financial records and transactions that have to be analyzed. Private investigators sometimes to talk with witnesses and get statements and get materials that are going to help show that the client is truly innocent. If my client is the corporation on its own, oftentimes those individual employees of the corporation have to be advised to obtain their own counsel to advise them as to what their individual rights are. Vice versa, I've represented a number of individuals in the opposite scenario where a corporation is under investigation, but that involves some investigation or inquiries into what a specific employee is doing. And so I will represent those individual employees because in that instance, it becomes a question of what is in that individual client employee's interest versus the corporation's interest. And sometimes it's important to show that the client has no knowledge of what the greater corporate structure is doing, or they have no involvement in a certain activity that the corporation may be involved in that may not be above board. It is always wise for employees of any sort of company that has in-house counsel to talk to independent counsel. In-house counsel is there, again, to represent the best interests of the corporation and of the business. Having an attorney to determine what is in that client's best interest, like myself, is very wise and is very necessary because, again, whatever is shared with in-house counsel is subject to questions about privileged communications. There's a question about who the duty of loyalty is owed to. Obviously, the biggest concern is avoiding any sort of criminal charges, repercussions, a loss of liberty. But when it comes to protecting the assets, that is another element that I'm always going to be working for, trying to secure and release funds that the client has available so that they have funds to cover living expenses and other expenses that come up as they move forward. Those are common things that I try to do because I want the environment to be comfortable ultimately for my client. I want to have it to where they're going to be able to return to their family. They're going to be able to continue earning a living. I tell clients often that I want them to continue to be able to live their life supporting their families. That's an important element of my representation in any type of case.